There's no pants. There's no pants. Just, you know.
All right, welcome to the podcast, folks. We've had a bit of a hiatus due to
The Cove
restrictions. Yeah, so we were basically unable to keep up with programming, but we're hopefully going to hop back in with some exciting content. So what's today's episode all about there, Pfarcus? I'm also your host, Widied. This is Pfarcus.
Pfarcus. Today we're going to talk about the question, can you grow out of gaming?
I'm done with this. Yeah. Can you grow out of gaming? Should you grow out of gaming?
We will answer this
What
question.
will happen to your life if you do?
All kinds of crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff. So sit back, drop us a like.
Comment.
If you want this kind of content in your life, comment, say stuff about us, do our face. Subscribe if you want to see future content, and hit a bell thingy. Hit all the buttons, like we just said. All the buttons, just everything. We like that. YouTube likes that. It definitely does. And on that note, sit back, enjoy the show, and relax. Most importantly, relax. Yes, not enough of that. True. So, welcome back. The topic is, today, should you grow out of gaming? Let's frame the problem here. So, like, everybody, especially as you get aged in life, as we know, everybody has friends that they used to game with that just drop off the map of gaming. And, like, especially with the online stuff, you feel it more now than you do necessarily when you were growing up. And you still did even when you were younger. Like, I feel like when you were younger, you know, you had like the friend. I've always been a gamer, so like video gaming was always a part of my life, no matter what. But like even when you were younger, there were points where like that people would just be like, I don't play games anymore. I just ride my BMX. That's what bikes were called back in the day. Clearly, I did more video gaming than biking. Anyway. There was drop-offs there, but I feel like it was different then. It was kind of like, you know, people that dropped off gaming then kind of came back to it. But like when you get older, it feels a little bit more stigmatic, a little bit more.
Yeah, and we've talked about this stigma against video gaming before. That's not necessarily what we're going to talk about per se, but there is that stigma of, you know, you're not supposed to be an adult in game because it's for children. And I think it's a little bit like saying music is for children. It's like,
especially
okay,
at this stage,
how can you say an art form is just for children? Especially when you look at, like, you know, a lot of the modern games like God of War, or even, you know, something that's a little bit, I think, more childish, but in a mature way, if that makes any sense, like Grand Theft Auto. Mm-hmm. Like, how can you argue that beating up hookers is for children? It's not really. I think it's a little disingenuous to say it's just
spines.
Yeah, like
if you're watching our currently new Let's Play.
Yeah, so there's a lot of themes, and even in more like what I would define as mature kind of stories, like in the new God of War, where the story's all about fatherhood and the struggles therein. So, and I think there's two parts to the question, and it's something that we talked about a little bit. How there's like the narrative game, and then there's like the esports game. That's all about like
we're wrapping it all up, folks. It's coming together. Everything we've ever said is built up to this point.
It's true. See, the things we talk about matter. Usually, sometimes. Because I think like the narrative kind of form, it's like movies, saying can you grow out of that is like saying, can you grow out of movies? Some people actually just stop watching movies because they have too much books. Wow. And they sip tea with their pinkies up. Her.
We just make noises with this.
But no, I think it's a little disingenuous to say, can you? And don't get me wrong, like, I think there is certain things. Like, I remember me and you talked about, like, the new Kirby game. No offense to anybody who likes the new Kirby game.
Total offense to those people. You all suck. You're the worst people. No.
But it felt a little too childish for me, just in terms of, like, the theme and kind of the story. And even just, like, how easy it was.
Yeah, it felt very thin.
Yeah, it felt very built for kids.
Even my brother-in-law really likes it. And, you know, all respect, obviously. Like, yeah. I just joke about, like, them being horrible people. Obviously, I don't hate my brother-in-law. But he loved the game, or he liked the game, but even he had like a criticism about it being like so easy that it was short. And it was like 6 hours, right? Most people were like, okay, I paid premium $80 for like basically a session on a really powerful session on the toilet. Just kidding.
But, you know. It takes 6 hours on the toilet. I think you should get that checked.
So, man.
Okay. No, but you know what I mean? Like, and I think it's a very subjective, personal thing. Like some people might say the same thing about, I don't know, Mortal Kombat or whatever. But I think to completely disregard the whole art form as being childish is a little reductionist.
You see it a lot, and I don't know if it's just like surfacing. Like obviously, we touched on the Joe Rogan podcast thing where you kind of said those comments about gaming, about how it was like.
Yeah, well, I have a real problem with them, and you do them, and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Kind of not productive.
Not productive. But like Bill Burr actually picked up the commentary afterwards too.
It is kind of silly. I stand by that. It is kind of silly past a certain age to be playing video games.
And kind of something along the same lines, although he put a comedian spin in it. So like, I kind of get what he's saying. He's like, I'm a comedian. I'm just making fun of anything. And, I get that. Like, that's fine. I actually don't mind that ribbing because it's true. I think comedians have honestly, like, if you're getting like political about a comedian, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
you're doing life wrong. Go like, just think about yourself and try to get your shit together, because comedians are supposed to point fun. That's like that's their goal. Like they're supposed to point holes in philosophies. But he did say some things that I think like where I didn't agree with him. But like I do think he's just making an exaggeration on something that exists. It does exist. There are gamers. There are gamers that take gaming too far, obviously.
Yes.
And there is an addictive quality, and it can be a bad thing. And it's just like, but I think that's like just the stigma, like we've talked about before, where it's like it can also be profoundly good. Like there's a ton of people, and myself included, and I think yourself included, there are story experiences now, I think, in video games that are far more compelling than even movies. I feel like movies are like flaking out big time. Like I can't tell you when the last time I saw a really inventive, good idea. I am so jaded when it comes to television. I don't want to see any more Marvel movies. I want to see more Star Wars movies, but I'm not a sucker fan for that. But I'm done with so much because it's just this rinse and repeat Hollywood bullshit thing of just, we're just going to keep giving you the same meal over and over again. It's like being in prison, being past the fucking rule. And you're like, okay, you got to eat to survive.
Even in terms of originality, like me and you have talked about this in person quite a bit, about how it seems like movies and TV are always just remaking something that already exists, or doing another sequel, or making a movie out of a game, or making a movie out of a book, or making...
Oh, that story you like? Here it is again.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I needed, like... Honestly, and this is like branching way out, not doing it inventing, but like they're telling stories like they're redoing Last of Us. They're redoing Borderlands. I don't need those stories again. They're already done well. Seeing them on the screen gives me absolutely nothing when the game is already good. Now, if you're going to give me something of a crappy game and be like, I can transfer this idea into something awesome, sure, I get it at that point. But you take a game that's already good, and all you're doing is opening yourself to, like, they nailed Handsome Jack. Like, how could they do like, I probably will watch the movie just because I love Handsome Jack so much that I just want to see what they do, and maybe they'll pull it off. But if they don't pull off Handsome Jack, I'm going to hate that movie by default.
Well, to get sidetracked a little bit, the thing I thought was weird about that too is, and we and you talked about this earlier, is how they're not even really staying true to the game either, in the respect that like there's the Claptrap character, which they hired Jack Black. No offense to Jack Black.
Yeah,
they already had a perfect Claptrap.
But yeah, the voice, why did you need a new voice? Why would you even do that? The voice is like, that character's already loved.
Yeah.
Like, granted, people love Jack Black. I'm not saying that, but like that character, you just peed on some fans' cornflakes, I'm sure. There's some fans out there that are like, why did you not just get this guy? He already does a fucking bang-up job.
Yeah.
I finally found another claptrap. Yeah, he's dead.
Like, and like, that's the same thing. Like I said with Handsome Jack. Like, it's so easy to screw that idea because like he was perfect in the game. Like his I love that character.
Telltale series.
In the Telltale series, he's like that character you can only go down from. And that's where my point is. And same thing with Last of Us. Like Last of Us, spoiler alert, I did play Last of Us 2. I take back everything bad I ever said about the game. I'll go into that in detail later. It's a good game. Anyways, but I can't see how they can give me anything that game hasn't already given me about that world. Like, the game is fantastic. The game's story is fantastic. It's not like you have Mario, the arcade game. Okay, there's a ton of open story to be delivered in there. This game is already a complete story. All Hollywood's doing, and we're getting really fucking old man ranty here, but is just giving you the same shit again to buy for a stupid price, I'm sure. Although it was a fair price for the game. Like, I think those games are fantastic now. Maybe not so much the newest Borderlands. It was okay.
Well, our point in kind of crapping on Hollywood is that we feel like video games are actually doing much more interesting and sophisticated,
And
creative,
they do
new things.
ideas.
Like even the new God of War, it's a game I know we mentioned quite a few times in the series, but it was actually kind of the start of this channel to some degree where we both
also,
said,
Dark Souls. There, got out of my system.
that's out of system now. He's done. He's not going to mention it again. Anyways, in terms of God of War, though, like that's kind of what started this channel. We started talking about how interesting it was, the crazy things they were doing, and the more mature take they were, and we both kind of commented on how like that deserves to be praised, that deserved to be talked about, and we didn't feel like people were talking about that enough about how mature gaming can actually get.
Yeah, I actually laugh because a lot of the commentary, like from Joe Rogan and Bill Burr and stuff, that feel a little bit trapped in their time. Like, you know, like a little bit like, it's kind of like if I started commenting on sports. Well, you know, last time I was like super in sports. I like MMA and some other like small things I'll follow, but like I used to watch hockey all the time when I was a kid. So if I was going to make a commentary on hockey, I would be from the 90s. Even now, my perspective would be like, yeah, Gerber Yager, he's freaking awesome, right? Like he was pretty awesome back in the day, but like now it's like whatever. And so like, that's what I feel with these perspectives that they have. They have like a very dated perspective. It's like of what they do. And it's not that they don't know like more sophistication is coming, but what they grew up really knowing is not very sophisticated video gaming. And now it's like the stories of games are epic. Like they're not just arcade experiences. They're epic. Like you're doing, for the most part, virtually you're doing things that are you're unfolding a story that is just as compelling as a movie, with music that is scored equally, if not better, in some cases.
Yeah.
And it like Doom Eternal, like
find me a movie that has a better soundtrack than Doom Eternal. And
criminally underrated in all awards. It's that movie needed awards for music. The Last of Us 2. I take everything bad I said. You did deserve awards, but you didn't deserve sound. I don't care, even though your sound was good. Nothing beats Doom Eternal's like soundtrack. That was amazing. Like all that to say is that I think that their perspective is a little bit dated. It needs to update. Like it needs to. They just need to realize that. And some of their like actually, if you listen to a lot of their commentary, these people that sort of like spot checking video games is very much like a protectionist thing. It's like most of them will even say it's like I know if I started playing, I'd be like eating Cheetos naked and not just growing fatter and all that. They realize that they would be addicted to these things, and I think they're kind of like mentally combating that. Like you know, which I think not enough people do probably.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a fair criticism. Like there's a lot of people that just get trapped and they don't live life. Yeah. But you can absolutely live life and play video games. Like that's not like it's like you can eat and play and live life. You can do anything and live life. You play sports. You can watch movies.
Well, I think even in terms of like one of the things that bugged me about the Joe Rogan comment is he just a refresher. I know we talked about it before, but he mentions how he feels like video games are not a very productive use of your time. For that matter, neither is playing cards. Neither is playing poker. Neither is going to a football game. Neither is. Going snowmobiling. Neither is going like there's a laundry list.
Actually, we'll put up a list of things you can do that are a waste of time. Wasting your time. Everything is wasting your fucking time.
That was all it was, a waste of your time.
That was us wasting your time too.
We were wasting. Wait, no, we're not.
Shit, no. We're the most productive thing you can do. You should be watching this. Don't ever question that. Anyways, yeah. So basically, folks, that's like ridiculous. People thinking that way, but it does affect people.
Yeah.
To bring it back to what we're originally talking about, it does affect people. It does make people like how many times have we are part of like above 30s, like an aging club, like aging gamers club. We all like try to like pump each other up and tell each other we still should do this. You know what I mean? You see them on Facebook all the time. It's like gamers above 30, gamers above 40, gamers above 50. It just keeps going. It's like until the point where nobody can exist.
Well, there's even a grandma gamer on YouTube that I think that's what she's called. That you.
Oh, Shirley Curry. Shirley Curry. Yeah, she's like she's basically considered the grandma of gaming.
Well, shout out to that lady.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Which is another topic we would like to take on eventually too, is dogs barking.
We might have to pause because of the dog bark.
A few moments later.
All right, so yeah, it's we're talking like Shirley Curry is an interesting perspective because like she's a person. This will be a topic we take on later on about how like you can continue to use gaming actually rather productively into old age.
Yeah.
That's a topic altogether different, but like the thing is that it does wrap back to she was able to get through the stigma and the fact that she can keep defining ways. And I think that's kind of true to how people need to be able to, like, you need to find ways and reasons to stay gaming.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like we've been talking about mostly narrative games so far, and I feel like those are a little bit above and beyond the point, because like you playing a narrative game is much like watching a movie, and you can just do it and nobody judges you and whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you can't do, and what we tend to miss with the camaraderie side of things is like those esporty kind of like, you know, your shooters, the things that like I tell the story quite often on the channel where I used to have a bunch of friends. We used to go in and play like Call of Duty together and all these other things, go in as a squad, and it was always fun. I still have kept a couple. Obviously, I game with you continuously. I game with my friend D-Rail. We still get together and game all the time. I still have friends that like gaming has meant something a little bit more than the average. Like, you know what I mean? And these are people with full responsibilities. I am not one of those people. Like, I do not have children, because I don't want to do that. I want my time. It's a little bit greedy thing, but anyway, the same thing with like a lot of people. Like some people choose to have children, and but then like there is a bit of a wrestling match with like responsibilities and stuff. You know, I do feel like there is a bit of a management game there, and a lot of times people, like we've seen a lot of times in the 30s and above gamer groups, that like you see people managing that situation. So instead of like giving up on games, if they're really attached to the idea of gaming, what they'll do oftentimes is they will literally just try to adapt in the same way that like your father might have been really into hockey. So when you get older, he takes you to play hockey, and he teaches you hockey stuff. And I see a lot of like gamers doing the same thing, where now they, you know, gaming is so integral to their life, they take little Timmy, and instead of shoving him in a dark corner and stabbing him with knives, they actually teach him how to play video games. And, you know, they'll go through, like, there's one guy I had to laugh. He said basically on the channel on his Facebook feed, he was like, yeah, I told my son that I'm not getting him a PlayStation 5 until he beats the original Ninja Turtles. And that
Good luck, kid.
Yeah, you're going to earn that PS5. But it was kind of fun. Like, it's a fun little challenge. So I see people, like, overcoming those things. And I can't really speak to that person because, obviously, I don't have kids. Either do you, but we can certainly, we have the struggles of like just doing like adulthood. There's still a ton of responsibilities that step in the way, but like it really becomes just managing that to some degree if you want to do it. And like honestly, there's lots of ways to justify it. Like for me, it's the camaraderie, it's having your friends. Like a lot of times, if you're an adult, it's hard to get minutes to like connect with people. You know, it's hard to always get together, go to their house, do stuff. Not saying that you shouldn't, you should definitely do that stuff. Obviously, that's important, but like it's hard to do it all the time because you have responsibilities. Maybe you only have like 50 minutes here, an hour there, 2 hours. That's where gaming really does fit in. I think that's where people can get back to it. You know, bring it back into life. They have to realize like it's not fair that life takes you away from your friends. And I'm not like just trying to guilt my old friends that used to play games. I am a little bit though. Fuck you, you're playing games. You need to play more games. But no, in all fairness though, like it's a good way to keep in touch because like you can always come back to that.
I think also like, and don't get me wrong, like obviously I'm kind of conjecturing because I don't actually have kids, but
I thought you were gonna say I don't have friends. Like,
those either.
That guy John Creep.
I don't have any friends, but all by myself. But you know, the common thing I hear is, "Oh, I just don't have the time," and you know, I can't really say for sure whether or not they have the time. And I feel like when we played the Let's Play of Predator Hunting Ground, each match was like 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, it's perfect game.
Yeah, and like. You know, if it's kind of like if you can sit down and
stay tuned for more.
Yeah, we will do more. You know, if you can organize a poker game with your buddies, and have kids, there's no reason why you can't organize a game and have kids.
Yeah, and like it was like integral for like to some degree. I mean, obviously we would talk on the phone and like chat about stuff that was going on in life, but like video game was integral for when we were like apart as friends to just get together and feel like we were hanging out because we'd get in Sea of Thieves and we'd walk around or we'd play some other game or whatever. We just there is kind of like a camaraderie. You're like doing something a little bit more. It's like whenever you're face to face, and don't get me wrong, couch co-op is awesome. Like face to face gaming and face to face anything, like just hanging out with your friends, like we're doing right now. Like that is really important. I think a lot of people also, as they get older, they realize that that's an important aspect, and they just sort of push gaming aside because it feels very like, oh, we have to get our headsets on and like we're not connected, and most people really treasure that stuff. But you can still do all that stuff. Like it's still a thing. Like we get together and play Towerfall all the time, like just like couch co-op-y stuff. I mean, we play online too because it's lazy, it's easy. Like,
Yeah.
well, and you're home, and especially in the middle of the cove.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Is in our province we had a lot of restrictions in terms of like household bubbles, and we basically couldn't actually occupy the same physical space to play couch co-op, and so and that's why.
And thus birthed Let's Plays.
Yeah, because we couldn't even do the channel in this way. So the Let's Plays kind of were birthed out of that, just to make sure that we kind of still had some connection, because we're both introverts, so I think we both kind of got into the same space of like, well, we're okay with just being locked in our cave.
I've beaten so many games. I am ready to do many reviews. Like I have like seriously knocked off so much of the backlog.
You did like Fallen Order, Last of Us, and
so much stuff. And I'm like now already started Resident Evil 7 because I want to beat it for Resident Evil 8. Anyways, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Like it's in some ways this whole like restriction thing is good. Like as an introvert, it almost gets it's a little too intoxicating.
Yeah,
like you're already comfortable entertaining yourself as an introvert. So I am a bit on the opposite end where I've achieved that introversion where it hasn't stunted me as a human being. So like I do recognize when I miss people, and then I'm like, oh shit, I wish I was playing cards or doing some kind of a thing that I do in person. But like overall, you can just kind of like forget and just
the outside world is dead to me.
Yeah, it's easy to do. But I do think overall, bringing people back into the gaming, like the comfortability of gaming, is kind of what this episode is about.
Yeah,
I think we've already kind of framed the issues, and we kind of already framed the problem and kind of the heart of what it is. But we haven't really talked much about how to get through that. So, what do you think? Should we bring them back? Should they come back? Like they're going to listen to us? Every one of you are going to listen to us.
Well, I think it boils down to priorities, right? And it sounds weird to talk about video games and priorities, but it's a little bit like the husband with the kids that's like, you know what, I just need poker night with my buddies. I feel like, especially like the esports kind of games, it's a little bit like that where it's just a matter of prioritizing your friends, and maybe your friends play video games, maybe they don't, and then it's not really an issue with
That's true. Yeah, it can also just be that maybe.
Yeah,
you make new friends and they don't play video games. You do what they do.
That's fine. If whatever else you're doing, that's fine. But if they do, like, you can kind of make sure that you're spending some time with your friends by saying, hey, let's play Predator, let's do Hunting Grounds, let's play Halo, let's play whatever your game is, and kind of have a poker night out, like in video game form.
How do you get around like feeling bad about the stigma and stuff? Like, let's say you are a person whose wife maybe isn't very supportive of your gaming habits. Maybe you're having friends that are just kind of like maybe poo-pooing on like your general lifestyle. Maybe you go to work and they like harass you and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It doesn't happen to me, but it could happen to people.
One of the things I've noticed is the stigma against video games tend to not be so much about the video games themselves, but about people getting obsessed with them. And I think to make sure that, like your loved ones aren't being like, you're too old to play video games, stop that. You just don't marathon them. You know what I mean? Like, just make sure that
maybe don't shirk your duties.
Yeah.
Maybe stop. Don't forget to bathe.
Everyone, equip healing potions to the hotbar if you haven't already. Kyle, go ahead and cast Arcane Brilliance to raise our intelligence.
Don't forget to bathe. Don't forget to take the garbage out. Don't forget to pick up the kids at soccer. Little Timmy has been waiting for 3 days to be picked up.
Little Timmy was left in the bed.
But you know what I mean? Like, just make sure that you're actually kind of being reasonable about it. Because the most common complaint I've ever heard is, and not to be sexist, but it's usually coming from women, is, oh, he just plays video games
sexist.
all day. But usually that's what I've heard from like my female friends is, my ex used to just play video games all day, and he used to kind of, I've never really heard a guy being like, she just plays video games all day, because I've never really heard that as a complaint.
You know what? It probably does exist.
I'm sure it exists. I just personally have never heard it. If you are a female gamer who plays games 24 hours a day,
and your husband gives you, or your boyfriend gives you crap, comment below and tell he's a sex brick. Just kidding.
That's always going to happen, anyways. But no, but like it's always about like that addiction versus just having a reasonable balance with it. Right? That tends to be the complaint against it. So I think if you want to make sure that the door is open, so to speak. It's a little bit like, and in fairness, that's true of anything. Like if the husband's going out and playing poker night with his buddies like 7 days a week and never showing up, never taking the garbage out, never putting his time into the relationship, and it's going to be an issue.
I feel like what's
there,
weird
so.
about this is like the stigma is directed more at what's being played than the person, which is not the case most other things. Like if somebody's like, man, you play way too much hockey, they don't blame hockey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or, man, you play way too much poker. They don't blame poker. They know poker is a game. They know hockey is a game. So why do people blame video games? That's what I'm stuck at. Like, why that seems different to people than just anything else that you do.
I honestly don't know because, even in my personal pastime, I watch probably way too many movies. I probably read way too many books. And you could do the same thing with those things. I listen to way too much music. And in fairness, some people have made fun of me because I rock out to heavy metal all the time. And they would just kind of be like, ha ha ha, you're the metal dude. Okay, maybe that was a very specific situation.
I feel like, yeah.
But you know what I mean, though. For the most part, like nobody really does that to music and movies and books.
No, actually, the opposite happens. If somebody's like a musician or really into music, they get respected as an audiophile, or if they're like into film, they're like, this film knowledgeable guy, he's awesome,
critic,
you know what I mean? And then this guy that plays video games, and you seriously just picture the Cheeto eating guy from South Park, like where it's like that. I don't feel like that's really fair.
I think it's a little bit of a stigma against technology in general. You kind of get the same idea with the kids that are always on their phones. Maybe they are cracking the code of the universe on those things when they're not talking to each other and staring at their phones all day.
No,
they're probably not.
No.
It's possible. No, it's not even possible.
It's impossible. Impossible.
But you know what I mean?
They're imploding the universe.
Yeah. I think it boils down to when video games, and this is a little bit of a history, but when video games first started, like before Nintendo, they actually were categorized as toys. Like that was their categorization.
And they played a lot more like toys back then too.
Yeah.
They were arcadey. They were very like, here's a weird little colorful thing that's supposed to symbolize a plumber.
Yeah. But they've kind of grown up since then. Even that I don't get, because playing cards, like poker, you're playing with cards. It's still
the same idea, like same action. You're just entertaining yourself basically by a game, and and so that at the end of the day is like, I think people unnaturally blame video game and the art of gaming, where it's not really fair, and I think that stigma just sort of continues to the point where it's like we've said multiple times watching that channel. There's so many people that come into like the Facebook groups and just apologize, or just sort of like blanketly reaching out for like, I play video games, I'm above 30, please help me, or like identify.
Please
with
like this if you're
like
also
this,
like me.
And it's like, it tells you something, right? Like it tells you poignantly that there is a problem. There is some kind of a problem that exists in society and just in general. And it's not fair. And that's kind of like that is kind of the brand of what we're trying to bring, is that, obviously, to some degree, most channels that do that are doing the same thing because a lot of people are our age, but we are specifically trying to be.
Well, if you sit down and think about it, it is weird though, because like you'll never see somebody who's like, I'm over 40 and I listen to music. Who's with me? You never see that.
You never say I'm over 40 and I watch a movie.
Yeah, it just doesn't need to be said, right?
Like, it doesn't need to be said. It's not like this weird AA group for any of that stuff, and it seems kind of childish. But then at the same time, you realize it is childish, but it's actually kind of endearing in the sense that like you feel bad because they clearly have some kind of a negative thing in their life that's driving this kind of emotions, driving this feeling. And I think what happens with people that like step away from gaming or grow out of gaming in quotations is that they kind of maybe just get into different social groups that maybe aren't gaming, and so they it's easy to see it in that regards as like, oh, I'm older, I don't need to do this, or maybe whatever. But like, I don't think it's a very objective point of view. I don't think you need to ever really fully cancel gaming out of your life per se. Like, and maybe this is just me talking because I have always been a lifelong gamer, and I see it way differently than most people probably, and I can understand that. But I think a lot of people are like us, and they are like, you're like us, but we're
one of us. One of us.
Yeah, that like that. But like seriously, where they see gaming as more of a, it's now becoming to the point where the art form is taking life. It's not no longer just Mario dinking around, even though those games still have a place in everybody's heart, obviously. Yeah. But like gaming is going to the next level. You get games like Last of Us 2 and Last of Us and all these other games that have just really detailed stories Jedi Fallen Order, fantastic game I just played. The story was really good addition to the universe. Ghost of Tsushima, like that was an amazing story. Like these games are evolving to a point where they're almost becoming more than like. There's a lot of people you just listen to them hot take. They'll be like, video games is the new medium for storytelling, like the new high. Like
well, and what's interesting that a lot of people kind of lost sight of is when when the Gutenberg press first came out, when books started to become more mass media, which is kind of. None of us were alive that day. If you were, maybe Shirley Curley was.
Shirley Curley. Now I can't even say it. Shirley Curley, not Shirley Curley.
Shirley Curley.
Not everything has to rhyme.
But nobody was really around for this. But when the Gutenberg press first came out and books became mass marketed, there was actually people that were like, kids are just going to read books all day. It's hard to think of these days because most people are like, we want our kids to read.
Yeah, more. They would beg for a kid to read a book.
Yeah, but at the time it was the new medium, and it wasn't really understood very well.
Maybe that is it. Maybe there's some kind of a thing like that, kind of draping in the background, that sort of like overarching fear.
Yeah, of the new thing taking over. Kind of thing.
I mean, there is weird circumstances like on the backside, let's flip it, devil's advocate.
Yeah.
We're obviously playing Let's Plays Predator Hunting Ground, and I can't tell you how many times in that game like a little Timmy popped up in the voice chat, and you're like, man,
you should not be playing this game.
Why are you playing this game? You can't spell any of the words that people are saying. Like you're just
even in the game you're ripping out the dude's spine.
Ripping out spines and like, oh my god, the worst was, and I told this joke already in the thing, but it's like the worst is literally if you're playing and the predator's in your proximity, and so there's like proximity chat, I believe, in the game, and then all of a sudden the predator talks to you, hey man, I'm going to kill you. Like
I feel so threatened. Yeah,
and you're just like, oh wow, like that has to be the worst pop-up immersion I've ever experienced in a game. But like, cool game, granted, and we have fun. We're having fun, and stick with us. We're going to be telling our story through Let's Plays, and we're going to do more too. So that's not just this one. It'll be more. But yeah, the point is that that kid should not be playing.
I feel that's weird.
Predator in the name, hunting ground in the name, spinal cords.
In the name. Predator Hunting Ground spinal cords. That's the name of the game.
Exactly. Like it's ridiculous. Like it really is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to what I was talking about, how like games are almost much more adult these days than
they're insane.
Yeah,
like, they are actually completely adult, and that's what like another touch thing. There's probably like 6 years old and whatever the hell playing this game, and their parents just think it's like Mario. Oh, it's Mario, but like Predator. Do rip out the spine. Cut off the head. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like you can tell like people are clearly out of touch with everything that's going on. I'm not saying all parents. Obviously, there's a lot of good parents when it comes to video games. And I think in order to be a good parent around video games, you actually have to be in touch with what video games are. Like that's clearly, you have to know where the medium has gone, not just be stuck in the 80s and where it was. Like you have to really appreciate the fact that like, there's really deep stories. There's like Last of Us 2 is very dark. If a kid played that, man, that's dark.
Yeah.
Dark story. Like, and it's a good story, but it's a dark, and it shouldn't be absorbed by children because they're not even going to get anything other than, oh, cool, I can stab people in the eyeballs or do whatever.
Well, there's a walking simulator game that I don't know much about, but I've been tempted on playing. The few reviews I read about it give it kind of like a thumbs up, but it's a game called, and it should be clear my point once I say the title, but the name of the game is called The Suicide of Rachel Foster. So it's going into obviously.
So it's clearly very lighthearted.
Yeah, so it's clearly going into some dark territory. I might even have to bleep the word of the title depending on whether or not we get demonetized. But we're not monetized yet anyway, so haha!
Joke's on you.
For those who don't know, in YouTube world, you need to have a certain amount of subscribers before you're monetized. And as a brand new baby channel,
they know.
Oh,
but they need to like us more.
You need to like us more.
Like us 100% more.
Click all the buttons. Anyways, but my point being, like the video games are going into some more and more mature territory, and not necessarily always in the dark side of things. Like with God of War being like a fatherhood simulator, I thought that was really
A lot of them are
Interesting.
good, and a lot of them are dark, but it's okay for it. Like it's because the medium is maturing. Like it has a rating system for a reason, just like movies.
Yeah.
But the problem is that nobody treats it that way. Like a lot of parents
Yeah.
are out of touch, and so they see everything's rated G, and that comes on a Nintendo, that
Actually-
PS5 Nintendo over there.
Actually, I remember when I worked retail, and this is a story I've heard. I don't remember if I've said on the channel before, but I've told you before. I used to work retail, and there was this little kid that comes up with his mom, and his mom was like, I want to buy the new Grand Theft Auto game. And I looked at the kid. This kid could barely see over the counter. And I'm like, I looked at the mom.
You're like,
and-
Timmy, shut the fuck.
No, but I looked at the mom and I said, are you aware of what's in this game? Just so you know. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there's a little rating system on the back that tells you why the game is rated R. She's like, the game's rated R. She had no idea. She looked at the kid. And,
Little Timmy.
well, I showed her the review.
Down right there because of you.
Well, I showed her the review, and it's like rated R because of the prostitution, blah blah blah. And she looked at little Timmy, and she said, "You told me it was just a racing game." And I could the disappointment in his child's eyes was palpable. I ruined this kid's
He
day.
remembered you.
Oh, yeah.
He's like he's hunting you, man.
If he's watching this, he's probably like, I know where you live.
He's doing the detail on the road. Like, yeah. Anyways, yeah, you ruined that kid's life.
Yeah, but my point being, it's like you said. I don't think a lot of parents are in touch with.
There.
Maybe nowadays, with parents being our age and they know.
I think it's more there's clearly instances where they're not, or they just don't give a shit. Like, you know, they
Might
can
be
have
a
really
little
bad
bit
parents,
touchy,
but like, there should be some thought. And I'm not trying to be puritanical about that, but like,
Yeah.
even for me, I don't want to hear a 6-year-old in my Predator game. Do it for me, parents. I don't want to
Yeah.
hear that.
Maybe it's just break the kid's
Ever.
mic or something.
Yeah, to make sure that they can never be on a microphone, and I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Sorry if you're a 6-year-old watching this, but I don't like your voice.
I kick your ass and Predator.
Yeah. It's not that I have anything against you, but your crackly voice is just retarded. Grow up.
And hate wars in the comment.
Bunch of 6-year-olds gathered together
Yeah,
just trashing it. Yeah, that'd be awesome. But yeah, in all seriousness, I do think like it is important that, you know, people find ways to come back to gaming, especially if you are gaming. Because if you game once, just you are a gamer. Like,
Yeah.
at some part of you being. And like I've had people that literally I could feel the fight in them. Like I've had friends
Yeah.
that were like, you could tell they wanted to, but they feel like if they do, they feel like they're automatically the 40-year-old virgin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Well, I think-
those days are over. But
And
that stigma is so done. You're actually very uncool if you don't play video games.
True story.
That's true.
Well, I think, and might be just me on a personal level, and this might be very subjective, but I feel part of growing up is, and I hate to say it, this is going to sound somewhat abrasive, coming from me. But I think part of growing up is just actually stopping giving a shit what people think and just doing whatever the hell you want.
That's the best part.
You know what I mean? Because you don't really answer to anybody as an adult anymore. Like,
No,
you don't
yeah.
really have to prove anything.
I mean, your mom can still look at you the same way.
Oh yeah, your mom hates you,
Trying to
but
make you feel like a piece of crap.
yeah, no.
But like
Your mom
generally, you don't have to listen to anybody else.
But I mean, you know what I mean? Though, like, there's nothing really to prove anymore. And don't get me wrong, if you don't want to rejoin video games, then just
By all means,
bury them.
I think
away.
it is possible to grow out of liking something. I don't think the game it has to be pointedly games. Like I feel like you're playing games maybe all the experiences are kind of just maybe the same to you. Even the new ones. I would personally think it would be harder now to have that perspective than maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
But see, for me, what was always interesting is that it would happen a little bit where I'd play, like, as a very young kid, you play all these arcade games, you get a little tired of the experience. But then the next system would come out and you're like, oh, God, okay, I got to get on top of that. And it always pulls you back in. And we're now to a point where, like, the systems are actually giving you really valuable storylines and very valuable, like even me, like you were saying, even the esporty games are very valuable experiences. Like, I have a fight night group that I go to, we play fighting games. That's transformed me in like a lot of my social cliques now, because it's another group that gets me out, gets me active in the communities that I take part in. And it's really fun. And so like there's even that layer that they're all gamers and they all continue to game. And so I think they all see the intrinsic value in it. But I've had people that I've like worked with who just literally just fell off the chart. And like I liked gaming with them. They liked gaming, but like they just clearly there's clearly some things that I think some people just get really busy. Right? Like honestly, their lives just like, how do I fit this in? And I guess at the end of the day, like some people are really only into specific gaming experiences too.
Yes.
Like I've a lot of the friends that I don't game with now is usually because they're very into specific gaming experiences and maybe they got really busy and so there's no way to like get back to that experience because you can't just buy a Nintendo Switch and play the next greatest shooter because that system is a little bit underpowered, so it's really hard for them to like partake in that level. And because I do think the Switch does answer a lot of people's issues as gaming as an adult in the sense like we've talked about amongst ourselves where it's like, okay, I'm running out of time to fit in gaming. How do I do that? Switch on the toilet, in bed, for you to sleep, wherever you can switch it up. And it's amazing. Like Nintendo really probably created one of my favorite systems of all time. Hopefully they stay on that trend of where they're going with that because I feel, and clearly they will because there's so much success built around the Switch that it's not like they're going to be like, oh, let's do another hookup console where it's this big and they're always going to be aiming for that now, which is good because we need that as a society. Society's getting busier. You're not getting less things to do. So it gives you that time back with games. And I can't tell you how many people that even in the Switch group or even on the gamers over 30 groups or whatever, where they're just like, the Switch is absolutely giving me the ability to be a gamer again. I love this. So it really does boil down to being a bit of a time issue. I think that's why you see things like Shirley Curry, fuck you, and your weird pronunciation.
Shirley Curry.
Anyways, that's where it's interesting on her end because like where she's an advanced age, but still has found a way to bring gaming back into her life. Because I don't think she always was a gamer, but I think like you get more time as the older you get. Obviously, if you aren't like, you retire and like maybe you're not mobile enough to do all of the things you want. Well, sometimes gaming I feel like would be like a very exciting option. And like this will lead into another topic I'd like to do later about like how like honestly what I think that looks for me. And some of this channel is dedicated to seeing us age as we game because like that's what it's about. We're trying to show you that it's okay to game and get older. And
I think also another thing is just to kind of get back to some of the things we talked about on how to get back to gaming. I think one of the things is it's not really a burden. It's not really a duty you have to gaming. Like if you want to take a break for a little while because you don't have the time, just take the break. And I even picture
no game's interesting.
And I'm even picturing like especially somebody with kids, like there might be a few years, especially when they're like from a toddler's age, you might not have as much time because toddlers have
Switch
an immense. Well, there's ways to kind of even mitigate that, but like a 0 to 5 year old kid takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, and it can just tire you out mentally. So but to your point, there's definitely an excusable range, but I feel like the tonality of what we're trying to say here is that there's always a way back. And like society's starting to understand now. Nintendo understands 100%. But actually, in all honesty, so did both of the other brands because like I praised Sony's and Xbox's ability to give us remote play through devices. Like I think they're like I can play on my PlayStation perfectly if I'm within the same house. And actually, I was at your house playing my PlayStation perfectly the other day. Well, not the other day, but a few months back when we first got it.
Back on the door.
But like it's a different world, and I feel like the companies now are realizing what the real selling points are, especially Nintendo. I think Nintendo's carved a way that nobody can deny the fact that that's like a selling point. Like people want the ability to be able to game how they need to game.
And I think even one of the things that kind of excites me is that there's these not necessarily new technologies, but there's these new ways of doing video games that are coming out. Like the PlayStation VR and the Oculus Rift and things like that, where, they're, even if you're just not into games, but you're into technology, there's this exciting new thing that's constantly on the horizon. And I'm kind of curious to see, because right now VR is in this weird little thing where it's a little bit taken more seriously than it used to be, but it's still kind of a niche market. It kind of,
PlayStation helped a lot with that.
It did.
More mainstream.
It'd be nice to see kind of like the more mainstream games, like even out in this generation of VR. I partook of the PlayStation VR, and I've noticed that the games have actually even kind of graduated from like dinky little experiences to actually full-fledged games.
Like more interesting experiences. I'm hoping that the PSVR 5, which I will probably get into this generation around, as if certain conditions may. I hope there's no cables. I need a Wi-Fi set. I'm going to be not buying it if there's cables. I just don't like that.
That's fair.
A little bit immersion poppy. And then it's like, okay, you got a big helmet on your head. That's kind of weird anyways. But like generally speaking, I'm not interested in that. But if they do update it correctly, like there is like some, like honestly, like Squadrons was like game changer for me. I didn't realize how much I would appreciate it until I played that, because like flying an X-Wing and flying a TIE fighter is like nerdgasm huge on a huge score. Because like
when it's actually
when it's around you, you can see it. Like I didn't realize how cool it would be until that moment. Even when I was playing the little game there, the Astros, whatever.
Astros.
That was cool, but I wouldn't have ever bought that because I was like, it's a dinky experience. It's kind of fun, but like it's like whatever. And like I could live without it. But then I realized once I played Squadrons, I was like, I don't think I could live without this.
Yeah.
Like I would always want the ability to go back and be in a, in that situation, or the ability to play it. I wouldn't do it all day, every day, but like, it'd be nice to have the ability to just put that on and be in a start.
Well, it's one of the things I find is really cool about VR is it's very focused on the experience. Like there's certain things I think even if you're not a gamer, VR can actually take you to. Like there's one game I bought on PlayStation VR where it's literally you just go down and explore the Titanic.
Yeah, I like those immersion-y ones, like the one where they put you into like a shark tank and the shark comes all around. Like that stuff to me is like stuff I wouldn't do in real life, so it's actually valuable.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind doing it virtually per se to even like imitate it. I mean, I know it's not the real thing, but I don't want to do the real thing. I want to do this fake thing that pretends to do the real thing, and then I could be happy.
Well, it's kind of like me with the Titanic. Like I'm actually like, first off, I can't swim, so the idea of being that deep in water is like anxiety-inducing. Like, but the idea of exploring this historic,
it's fun, or interesting, And like the one critique I give it openly, and this is totally another side rant, but it's I do feel like the VR graphics of the PS4 wasn't strong enough to handle like the visuals, because there are points where I remember I would be playing and it was like really muddy.
I've noticed the textures are a little muddy.
It feels a bit hard on the eyes.
I don't know if that's the developers' development kit or
probably a limitation to some degree of the graphical power that, and I'm hoping they get around that maybe in this new version. They should, obviously, by virtue of the strength of these new systems. But like I think like even having a bit of an extra workhorse in the unit itself could help. There's definitely some kind of thing, because I even found that the game looks better on TV than it did in that. Like
I've noticed that with Squadrons, because I played Squadrons both in the non-VR and the VR, and don't get me wrong, it weirdly enough doesn't necessarily break the.
It doesn't break the illusion. It doesn't hurt like that much, but every now and again you're like really squinting hard to kind of like, what is the detail of that thing? It's just like the far off stuff, like the depth of that. It does play around with your eyesight a little bit. Yeah, felt a little off, but overall positive experience though. Yeah, I love that.
But my point is, one of the things I think is kind of. And my point with bringing up VR is like there's not just one kind of video game anymore. Like it's not just Mario or just the Atari. You had like the blocky little dudes that run around. It's not just that anymore. There's different kinds of experiences, and
so many.
Maybe you're more into the storytelling, so you go with the narrative. Maybe you want poker night with the guys, so you play like Predator Hunting Grounds or Halo or whatever.
These other multiplayer experience.
Or maybe you just
Destiny. Other one people love.
Or maybe you want to experience what it's like to visit the Titanic. Then you go through the VR and you actually kind of feel like you're there, so to speak.
There's so many angles now.
Yeah.
So many angles. You can even have brainy like strategy things if you just want to be like I like solitaire or like these sort of chess experiences. Yeah. Like there's anything that you want to do. Video games right now is so complex and as an offering. I think all that what really makes me upset about like these very simplistic takes is their simplicity. It's just very ignorant. It's like Bill Burr or whatever. It's kind of funny because like, he's just making a joke of it, and I get it. But you can't take it seriously because he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's the same thing with Joe to some extent when he's saying like what he's saying about video games. Like I get what you're saying, but it's a little out of touch.
I think
very addictive. And
I think what Joe Rogan's point he was trying to make, which I don't think. Forgive me, Joe, for trying to speak for you, but I think what he was trying to say is basically you should not become addicted to games, and I do agree with him on that point.
I do agree. I just feel like his point was like that was his point, but his perspective was that it will just happen and it will just tear your life apart and you have no control over it. It's like no, you absolutely have control, and it's more about the person at that point, and it is always about the person. That's kind of like what we're trying to talk to here, is that you can be addicted to anything, and anything can be horrible for you, and it doesn't make what it is bad as much as it makes your management of it bad. And so I think as long as you keep that in perspective, that's really the main thing.
And I think that's why
fighting this.
And I think that's why people, look at video games and kind of see something childish is, well, I think there's what you were saying where like, they've only seen like the 1990 version of video games, and that is kind of a little bit on the dinky side. But also I think people also have heard the horror stories of like the people that play WoW until they like.
Mm-hmm. That's like where the Joe perspective I feel like was coming from. It's more like
the addictive.
But he had seen things. So like he's also looked in, like both of them, him and Bill Burr actually had a moment, not that they were talking together about the subject, but they both had a moment where they were like, fuck, if I played this, I'd be super addictive. I can see how these are addictive.
Yeah.
And so they kind of have that fear. Because if you don't do it, and maybe you played video games in the 80s and you're like, okay, well, it's a dinky experience. I'm not going to get addicted to this. I'll play for fun and then move on with my life. It's kind of what that was. But then you see these experiences that are like massively 300-hour epics and like time sinks of insane amounts. And then you rightfully so, there is a little bit something to be afraid of there. Yeah. But you have to realize that you're not expected to just buy these games, these 300-hour games, and do nothing but play these games. Now, there are people that will do that because they're so addicted, and that is unhealthy. And like, you should space things out a little bit. Every now and again, you're going to take a liberation. You're going to play a game that's so powerful, so moving. Like it happened to me with Last of Us 2, actually. When I started playing it, it was like pretty good. But then towards the last act, I was like super hooked. I think I stayed up way stupid late beating it. Yeah. It's going to happen. And that's indicative of anything. I've stayed up watching movies I love later than I should. I've stayed up reading books long. Like that's the point, people. You never have to be embarrassed about gaming because it's just like these things. There's no difference. No matter what anybody tells you, there's absolutely no difference.
And it's one of the things I think is kind of did not help the stigma is when games started to be like measure how long you played them. I mean, can you imagine if somebody who's into football measured every hour they've spent watching football?
It is a bit weird, but there's a weird gamer badge of honor with that.
I think it's
but like sometimes your friends will be like, I've put blah 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 hours into this, especially in the fighting game thing. Because like I know it's like with me, I think I have this like pretty kind of like I've at least put over 1,000 hours into Dragon Ball Fighters easily. Yeah, and probably other fighters too, like Tekken. I know I put a lot of hours into that too. But like, there's almost a badge of honor behind some of that. It's like,
I think looking from the outside, that's the thing that people find weird. Because like I said, nobody really says like I spent
30,000 hours watching football.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah,
and so I think people who don't understand why that is a badge of honor, that it's like
it could also be an overcompensation thing where people just feel like because like they constantly have to justify why they like playing video games, and it's kind of
it kind of, and this is gonna sound like a little bit of a tangent, but I do have a point, I swear.
This whole thing is a tangent.
It does remind me a little bit of horror movies, how there's always like I'm not a bad person, I just like horror movies. Constant justification kind of thing. Yeah. And I think video games have the same thing where it's like I'm not a child, I just like playing video games.
Yeah.
And it's this weird thing where like, and again, I stick to my guns, and I know this is kind of abrasive, but I stick to my guns. The part of maturity is to not give two flying shits what people think about you anymore, and just
that is important. That is
this is
important.
Just
to living a happy life.
Yeah,
and I think like eventually, but people naturally try to like gauge what they're doing within the context of their societal surroundings, their friendship bubble, and you can tell like some people have some really shitty friends. Yeah, because none of my friends, and not like my wife and everybody, like nobody like judges me based on my video gaming. They just realize it's a hobby. And that's a thing I enjoy doing, and they know how complex it's getting because I talk about it all the time. Like, they're you people. Like they know like games are no longer these simple things, and some people only like those style games. Like my wife, she will only play 2D games. Like the 2D era is like. She refuses to go past it. Like the 3D realm is just not something she wants to ingest, or visuals maybe can't handle, whatever. Yeah. But like she does game within that sphere. Just like, teach their own. She finds fun in those puzzles and experiences, and Dr. Mario is a thing.
If Candy Crush is your game, and you just go to town on Candy Crush.
Yeah, and so like there's lots about retro gamers. Like we're not necessarily retro gamers in the sense that we're not always like trying to fish for old games. I feel like we live those. Like this is a hot take that we're gonna spit out there, but we're not really retro gamers. Like to me, gaming has been something that's evolved, And I kind of want to evolve with it. And I'm not shitting on people that will just want to live in that past of video games. Like I get it. Like it's very part of me. But I very seldom actually go back and play old games. Like I just go to the next one a lot. And it hasn't been until recently that I've got a little bit nostalgic about keeping games. Like I used to always just sell games. I'd get them, like experience it, and then sell it to get the next one. You know what I mean? And maybe some of that was because I didn't make as much money back then, like whatever. But like, so I couldn't. It was a lot harder when you're a child. You know, you get a game like for your birthday present. You're like, oh, I really want this game, but I can't afford it. So you like pawn off it for the $5 at EB. Fuck you, EB. But you know what I mean? They give you like 5 cents and a high five and whatever. But my point is that do what you want in terms of video games and don't.
Well, I think the key takeaway, and I think the most important lesson in terms of whether or not you're growing too old for gaming is it's like anything else in your life in terms of balance. Like, are you playing so many video games that you're missing your responsibilities? If the answer is yes, then scale that back because you're making it a problem.
And responsibilities are what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Let's say you only feel conflict. You should only feel conflict if you have goals and something's getting in the way of those goals.
Yeah.
If your goals is just simply to play video games and you're hot on the trail to happiness, right?
Yeah.
It really is a personal thing. And I do get why people could do it. I don't think people should do it because I think if you're playing video games, you're playing them for a reason.
Yeah.
At some point, you should probably just continue to do it to some degree. But I mean, there could be a thing where it's like, you know, maybe you've grown to learn how to play music and now you just want to make music and maybe you can't play as many games, in which case that's cool too. Like we're not saying that you have to always play video games. What we're saying is that you shouldn't ever feel bad for playing video games. If that's what you want to do, you should absolutely enjoy it, folks. You should sit back like you do with a movie. And there's a lot of people that aren't apologetic about it at all. And you know, that's why YouTube's been very good for this momentum behind the gamers because it's given a lot of voices to people that literally are not really giving themselves a voice because they're in the room playing video games or doing whatever, right? So like there's a lot of people speaking out and saying like this is the way. That like there's a lot of young people and young people have a different perspective on video games. I feel like that's where I'm hoping we're a little bit different in the sense that, you know, we are older, you know, I won't say how old, goddamn old, and get off the lawn and little Timmy, fuck you, whatever. But you know what I mean? We're trying to give you a perspective about age and gaming and that things. Like you do get older, but you don't really change. Like I'm not any much different. I probably
things hurt more.
Things hurt more.
Yeah.
Things don't work as well. In general, you can't even eat what you used to eat. I remember being a tank in university.
I used to eat fast food all the time. Like, now I eat the wrong fast food and I can't sleep for 3 days because I got acid reflux all over the place.
Yeah, it's like you have to be like super much. But it's like, you know, you look at us, we don't look that old. I know I look like I'm 20, but I can't help that. I'm not, but I just can't help it. Yeah. But the point is that, you know, you can watch people grow old, hopefully through us. And, you know, and we still enjoy playing video games, still enjoy talking about video games.
Yeah.
That's what this channel's about, talking about, you know, if you didn't know, that's what we do.
Yeah. And, you know, I still even remember as a kid being excited about, I think the first game I talked about seriously with my friends was Chrono Trigger. And one of my friends is like, oh, you gotta play this game. It actually has like 16 different endings. And this was back in the day, which was the style. When games did not have any sort of complexity. So they
barely had an ending.
They barely, like the ending was congrats, you beat the game. Restart it now. Kind of thing. So this idea of this game that has 16 different endings was like, that's
pretty wild. Chrono Trigger was awesome. One of the top 5 RPGs.
Yeah, and when I played the game, it had an emotional storyline and maybe if I played it now, it'd seem a lot more childish. But my point being is like, it's something that I always found an interesting avenue to look at it in terms of like things that get me excited and things that are interesting to me. And that never really stopped. Like I'm not quite the same as you, as I had a little bit of a couple of gaps in my gaming timeline. But that element of it has never really stopped where I'm like, oh, VR has so many cool, like the experience is almost indescribable. God of War has all these cool things. And I've never really stopped being excited about the new stuff. And I think, you know, there's nothing wrong with being I think it's kind of the same reason people go to football games. Oh man, did you see that play? You know, like there was an excitement there, and I think again to answer the question of whether or not you can grow out of gaming. I think it's are you still excited about it? Does it still kind of bring you that joy? And if the answer is yes, then that should still be a part of your life. There's no reason why it can't be a part of your life. Again, as long as you're not becoming addicted and shirking your responsibilities. And you forgot to shave for 300 days and you haven't showered and you know the neighbors are complaining about your smell. Then maybe you should stop playing games.
What is that green cloud?
That's my farts.
Pfarcus for a reason.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. I think ultimately we can kind of almost end on that now.
I think so too.
In the sense that, you know, people should find ways back if they really want to. If you don't, then that's fine too. But like if you ever get nostalgic for a game, like don't be afraid to reach out. Like, especially for me, I'm not just speaking to my friends, but like anybody that's gaming. Like for me, gaming has been integral for keeping friendships alive. And at the end of the day, what's more important than that?
Yeah.
So find time. Like if gaming is not even your thing, find some time to do it. Like you don't need it to be gaming either. Like ultimately friendship is the goal, but like if you share video games, that's even better because video games just make hanging out convenient. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of easy ways to do it, folks.
Yeah.
So on that note, if you liked anything about what we said, drop us a like.
If you disagreed with everything we said, comment below and start a flame war.
Yeah, tell us all those things.
Or if you agreed.
Or if you
Also just comment below.
Make us feel fucking awesome. Subscribe if you like the content. We do podcasts every Sunday. We do also usually a random idea, but they're kind of like structured ideas for like Wednesdays. It's like, it might be interchange what comes out. Like it might be a Let's Play, it might be a review, it might be just a random top 5 or maybe something. But like we're going to try to do 2 videos a week. Stick to that as much as the code will let us. And drop us a subscribe. Drop us that's what the kids say, right? And
hit the notification bell.
Yeah, the bell thing. And hope you enjoy the show.
Peace.